A childhood under constant surveillance. A childhood under constant surveillance. This and other revelations from Ruby Frankie's daughter, Sherry Frankie's new book.
Mm-hmm.
Big deal, little deal, no deal. 3, 2, 1.
As the cold winds of winter sweep in, there's nothing like the warmth of a comforting cup to help you slow down and unwind. This is the season. Let Postum be your cozy companion. Made from roasted grains, Postum is caffeine-free and rich with a smooth roasted flavor. It's the perfect drink for those quiet, chilly mornings. Whether you're curled up with a good book, sharing a laugh with loved ones, or simply watching the snow fall outside, a cup of Postum is the moment you have been waiting for.
Hello and welcome to This Week in Mormons. We are so glad you are with us today.
So glad.
I am your host, Matt, along with my sister, Melissa.
Hello, Matt. How's it going?
It's going so good, Melissa.
Oh, Matt, you're wearing a different kind of an outfit today. Like you don't have a tie on. I don't know. You look more, how do I say, normal.
Yeah. It's Friday. Maybe it's because it's Casual
good.
Friday.
Yeah, okay. Got it.
Sometimes when I come to work, I really feel like dressing up and looking nice.
Yeah,
And sometimes I don't.
I feel you.
Yeah. Today's been a bit of an interesting day. And I don't know. Do you know
Okay.
what? I think it's okay if I say this.
I hope so, because it sounds like you're going to say it.
I had to wake up at, everyone's going to be like, you lazy, lazy professor.
Okay.
I had to wake up for a meeting at 7:45 a.m.
Matt, are you for reals right now?
I'm serious.
Matt.
It was on Zoom, but I felt
you
the
had
urge,
to wake up for a Zoom meeting?
but I really did get dressed up and come to campus and watched it with my department because it was a general faculty meeting. And,
Sure.
they teased that there were going to be all these big announcements.
Yeah.
This is
Matt.
this is the big announcement, Melissa.
I'm ready.
The church is working on creating a common general education curriculum for BYU, BYU Idaho, BYU Hawaii, and we're not going to all do it kind of in our own way anymore.
Interesting. Okay.
That's kind of like anticlimactic, right? Kind of like, who cares?
I mean, yeah, kind of. I don't care. I mean, I think it's nice that they're all different, frankly, but are they all going to get sports now? Like, are we going to be same like that?
I'm thinking that there are lots of faculty members who are going to be super mad about this.
Yeah.
The only thought that I heard that I kind of agreed with is somebody was like, we need to make sure that we have people on a committee from all three institutions together in the same place to talk about this.
Uh-huh.
Maybe we should do it in Hawaii. Maybe. Yeah.
Yes.
That's as far as I got.
Is there like a hierarchy? Like BYU Provo professors are like, we're the best. And then BYU Hawaii are like, yeah, nobody cares about us.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, okay.
I don't know exactly how BYU Hawaii professors perceive themselves.
Uh-huh.
I think they know that deep down we all wish we lived in Hawaii. We all think that would be awesome.
Uh-huh.
But for sure, Provo, they think that they're the best.
Okay. All right.
You know what, though? I think there's something about BYU Idaho where we think we're the best in other regards. It's like, oh, maybe they're scholars, but we're the best teachers the world has ever known. Something.
Are you the best people?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
I just want you to, go ahead.
Do you remember the Elder Holland musket fire speech?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, there were plenty of people here that I heard tell me, we didn't have to have that talk because we're better than they are.
You guys said BYU Idaho didn't need the musket talk. It's probably right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you know that, Matt, I am at work at 7 a.m. every day.
Oh, Melissa. Oh, that's horrible.
It's fine.
Do you wear pajamas to work?
Matt, I get up. Here's what I do. Here's my morning routine, okay? I get up. I do some exercise because I got to do my strength training in the morning. Otherwise, I'm just not feeling it. Then I have myself a little bit of, should I say, our sponsored drink, Postum.
Oh, yeah. But you don't drink Postum.
But I don't. I have some Diet Dr. Pepper. And then and then I get ready, and then I feed the dog, and then I prep lunch for the day, and sometimes I start dinner in a crock pot or something. And yeah, I'm out the door by, I don't know, like
7
early. Yeah, but it's great. It's great.
I wake up at 5 every morning, Melissa, and then I just veg.
Do you?
until like 8
You should
o'clock.
meditate.
That's what I meant by veg. I
Yeah, that's what I
meditate.
thought you meant. That's what I thought you meant. Hey, Matt, we've got some stuff in the mailbag.
Yeah, this comes from a listener who watched our interview with Sam Benson.
Mm-hmm.
Their handle is at Remedy82. I wonder what that means, but that's okay. Remedy82 says, I think it's important to note that when it comes to blurring the line between reported and opinion pieces, the Deseret News and some of its editors intentionally blur that line as well, particularly when it comes to state issues, pet issues of the Des News execs, and church coverage. Without a
What
doubt.
what does that mean? That they're saying that that there's it's
I'll
not
tell it.
clear what's news and what's opinion intentionally? Is that what they're
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
I see. Okay.
That when the Salt Lake Tribune comes out with a story about BYU faculty members feel scared about the leadership of Clark Gilbert, the Deseret News on the same day has a story about, I left the University of Utah Law School to come to BYU Law School, and I'm the happiest I could ever be.
Okay. All right. Well, speaking of Matt, everybody does want you to respond to that news article about, the Salt Lake Tribune. Here's the thing, though. Could it not be said that the Salt Lake Tribune was just creating news by writing that story? I mean, it's not like something happened specifically, like there was some big change or some big news event. Am I wrong on that? It seems like they just kind of created the news. I don't know.
Well, I think that everybody's going to take that story and look at it in their own context, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there was something newsworthy in that story that probably hasn't been reported on and discussed much, which is that Clark Gilbert's leadership style makes some faculty members, and we're going to interview Ben. We have an exclusive.
Ben Shalati.
We have an exclusive interview with him next week that we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
He was an administrator at BYU, and something about Clark Gilbert's leadership style made him feel unsafe and makes faculty members feel unsafe.
Interesting.
And that's not a knock on the broader discussion of like, everybody agrees that BYU is a church institution and should uphold some standards, but there are real differences in leadership styles. It's not saying anything bad about Elder Gilbert, because I know him personally and I like him and I think he's a great guy.
Yeah.
But he has his own leadership style. And I've been at BYU Idaho for now 12 years. I've seen 4 different presidents, and they all have their own leadership style, and that has an effect on things on campus. I think that story, it could be an interesting story.
Okay. The story, though, where BYU professors, basically, I think what is irking people is that your job is on the line if you need to repent or try to better yourself from a sin, basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I do have genuine concerns about that, right?
Okay.
Because it's not just about faculty.
Mm-hmm.
There are people in the community, and there's a limited number of people that commit suicide and things like that. So I don't want to point these causal arrows, right? But I will say that in my community, I know individuals who've had situations where they needed to repent of something big, and it was like it's a huge deal for anyone to repent, but it was a larger deal for them because they risked losing everything, right? Family, job, everything.
Yeah.
And so there does need to be a space to allow people who are trying to be faithful members of the church and who believe in the church mission and all that stuff. There needs to be a space for them to repent. And sometimes the repentance process can take a long time, but to repent without the fear of they're going to lose every single thing in their life.
Yeah. Because I feel like if I had that fear, I would just lie, and then I wouldn't better myself and I wouldn't change.
And I imagine a lot of people do. And I will say I can't speak to that. I don't know if there is that space. I know what my contract says. I know that if I lose my temple recommend, I have 2 weeks to get it back or I'm fired. That's
a very short period of time.
Yeah. But I've never put myself in the situation to test that and to say, hey, you know what, guys? I don't want to lose my job, but I'm going to have to have some restrictions on my membership for a while. Is there any way we can negotiate this? I don't know how often that happens because that stuff's private, but I do know it's a legitimate fear if you look at your contract and it says, if you lose your temple recommend, you have 2 weeks to get it back or you lose your job. That can be overwhelming for people.
And it could kind of depend who your bishop is, right? Like if they're
Mhm.
one who wants to report immediately or how seriously they take things. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Well, but there are some things that if you confess to a bishop, there's some things that as soon as you confess that to a bishop, he says, okay, before we do anything else, I need your temple recommend and I need to cancel that. And since it's all electronic now, the church will
Gotcha.
get a notification right away that it's canceled.
Okay. How often do you have to meet with a bishop to get, I don't know, recommended for your job? Like how often does that happen?
Never. I never have
Oh,
to do it.
just when you are hired, and then if
Hmm.
something like got your recommend taken away, then you would lose your endorsement or something like that?
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay.
But here's the other side of it. I think that people underappreciate, Melissa, is that members of the church feel welcome to write emails to my boss and my
Yeah,
president on a regular basis complaining about the things I do or don't do.
right.
And some I think faculty members and employees just want to feel like the administration has their back, which I feel that way. I feel like
Mhm,
my
mhm,
president, I feel like they have my back.
mhm.
But there's just some things about Elder Gilbert and his leadership style that can make people feel like maybe he's not on their side. And I
I
think that
see.
that's what that story was trying to report. Is like
Interesting.
sometimes people feel like he's not supporting them,
Hmm.
and I don't know if it's true or not, but I do know that some people feel that way, and that's just a function of his leadership style.
I see. Yeah. That was good context. Yeah, I appreciate your response to that. I mean, I know that you get offers all the time to go to different colleges, universities to teach elsewhere, and that you really, really, I think I've heard you say it, you believe in the mission of the church schools and what you're trying to
Yep.
accomplish there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when I interviewed down at BYU, I told them I would never go anywhere besides at BYU,
Mm-hmm.
because I just strongly believe in what we're trying to do at the BYUs.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, not everybody in the church does. And I
Right.
think that that's fine, right? It's
Right.
fine.
Yeah.
But I do think it would be nice if members of the church would be a little less judgmental of like
What?
deciding for themselves
That
what.
we are not judgmental people. That is not something that is ever known about us.
I know, I know. It's a
Yeah,
very unusual. It's a weird request, I know, because it just seems so out of the blue.
it does. It
But
does.
seriously, could you imagine, Melissa, somebody writing to your principal about something you
Oh, it
said
happens
at
all the time. It happens
uh,
all the time
yeah,
because
yeah.
parents are so helicoptery. Even in a university, they're still trying to control their students' grades and their papers and when they turn in and all that kind of stuff. Like they have a very hard time letting them adult at the appropriate age.
Speaking of which, did you hear about the young woman who was living in Merrill Hall at Utah State University, and her resident assistant is transgender. She's a transgender woman, and
Uh-huh.
her mother found out. And
Uh-huh.
it's not enough just to move her daughter out of Merrill Hall, but no, we have to contact the state legislature, we have to contact the governor, and we have to pass laws to make sure this kind of thing never happens again. So
Wow.
I guess it happens
Wow.
to everybody, right?
Well, when you're applying for colleges these days, I just know because, I help students with that all the time. Every single application now has, are you okay living with a transgender student? Like that's just
Mm,
an application question. It's not going to determine whether you get housing or not. They're just saying, do you want male or female housing? And are you okay with a transgendered roommate? And I think that almost 100%, I've never heard or seen anybody be like, nope, I'm not okay with it. Like, as a function of their generation, they literally don't
right.
care.
Right.
Yeah.
But our generation does care, and when a
Yeah.
mother hears, and I even totally understand if the mom wanted to like have her daughter move to another floor or something like that. But
Yeah.
to make a big fuss about it is just indicative of the things we were talking about before.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's
Well,
move on to quick clips.
yeah, we get to Elder Gilbert. Speaking of Elder
Yeah.
Gilberts,
I don't know if we said this for the listener, but Elder Gilbert's title is the Commissioner of Church Education, right? So
yes,
he's over all things having to do with all BYU. And is there other non BYU education that he's over?
I think the church still has junior highs and elementary schools in the island areas, but then it
Oh,
also is over seminaries and institutes.
oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Well, so he was speaking to the J. Reuben Clark Law Society. They regularly invite general authorities to come and speak to them about religious topics.
Uh
And
huh.
so Elder Gilbert spoke to them about religious freedom and the importance of religious expression, and in that reiterated some of the things that he said, in my opinion, a bajillion times, but for other listeners, it might be new, about that church schools have a stewardship to both provide intellectual content, but also content that supports the mission of the church.
Yeah. Well, my question, and I don't know if this is related, but do you personally, and then in general, do you pray before every class that you have at BYU schools?
Yes, we're encouraged to have a prayer at the beginning of all of our classes.
And at the end, or?
Not at the end. And we
Okay.
used to have piano, so some people would sing hymns, and
Okay.
some people do spiritual thoughts.
Okay.
In my particular class, I start class and I say, does anyone want to volunteer to say the prayer? And sometimes nobody does, and so if they don't, then we don't have a prayer.
Okay.
But if they do, then we pray.
Okay. And would that be like the extent of the incorporation of spiritual into educational, or is it much more broad than that?
No, I think for me personally, like if we talk about the Constitution, then I make sure that we talk about what President Oaks said in General Conference about the Constitution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or when we talk about political participation, I try to bring in things that the living prophets have said about political participation.
And so if somebody's writing a paper for political science, is it okay if they use like a general authority as a source or as, like as a citation? Is that pretty common in academics at BYU?
So I think it just depends on the nature of the assignment. Like if I'm asking them to do some kind of a reflection paper or some kind of application, then of course. But I typically don't assign those as things that are graded for points because
Mm-hmm.
like objectives of things like we're trying to measure that we show students understand certain ideas.
Yeah.
And it's not very common that we have this like outcome that's like they can reflect on the prophet's interpretation of whatever, right? So
Yeah.
I'll typically just do that in class. They'll do some kind of reflection, but I would never. I don't think they could cite President Oaks's talk as like a source for some kind of an exam or something like that.
Because he's not an academic in that way, but it's just integrated thought within the overall study.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because if I want to say, hey, this student knows the field and I'm going to give an example of their work, it's not going to fly if it's like citing Benson and Oaks and everybody.
Right.
And yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting. Hey, did you know that in the United States, we got a new president inaugurated this week?
Seriously? Like,
Mhm.
why
Yeah.
hasn't anyone been paying attention to that?
I don't know. So his name is Donald J. Trump. And as per the usual, when a new president is inaugurated, the first presidency sends over some of our high-hitting officials. So the apostles Gary E. Stevenson and Gary and Garrett got to go, Garrett W. Gong. And they went to the inauguration.
We sent the double G's.
We sent the double G's. I think they're like best friends in real life. And they're like, hey, double G, can we go together? That's how I think they are.
I wonder if members of the Quorum of the 12 hang out with each other.
Of course they do.
Oh, okay.
Do you hang out with your colleagues like every now and then?
At like official functions, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well,
it's not like at Christmas time. I'm like, you know what? You guys should come hang out at my house for Christmas.
I think they probably do. At least the double G's. I think they're besties.
Yeah. They're all empty nesters, so maybe they want something to do.
Yeah. The first presidency issued a statement that said, we invite all to pray for him, meaning President Trump. We invite all to pray for him, other elected officials, and leaders of nations around the world.
By the way, we do that in family prayer every morning. Not necessarily for Trump, but we regularly pray for the leaders of the world.
Okay. So what if you don't like Trump? Are you still going to pray for him?
Yeah, I'll pray for him. Yeah, of course. He's the leader of our country.
Yeah. I think, praying for the president doesn't mean that you like endorse him and everything that he does. It just means that like you'd like God to direct his path,
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing to do.
I don't know if you do this when you pray for your adult children.
Uh-huh.
I used to like have really specific things I would pray for them.
Yeah.
But more and more I just pray, hey, you know what they need better than I do. And I feel like that's kind of the way I pray for the leaders of the world.
Yeah.
You know better than I do, but I'm praying for them.
Pray for their good, that they can accomplish the things that they are trying to accomplish. Or
if they're being thick-headed and their wife is really mad at them, help them to see the
Yeah.
wisdom of what their wife's telling them.
I pray that all the time, especially when I'm praying and my husband's listening. I'm like, and please help that thick-headed husband of mine. I don't.
He really thinks that we need a snow machine.
Yeah.
Help him to see.
Help him to see my way. Okay.
We don't need that. We need a rotisserie chicken cooker of some kind.
You get me. You got me. Yeah. Do you remember who Connor Mance is? Connor Mance?
I will never forget Connor Mance because my son ran cross country at Skyview High
Yeah.
School, and so Connor Mance is
And that's
like
where Connor's from, right?
he is,
In
yeah.
Cache Valley, Utah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's kind of like our favorite athlete here at TWIM. I feel like he's our like patron sport saint. Yeah.
Did you see? A lot of people might not have watched this, but in the U.S. National Championships, it was like the one to decide who's going to go to the Olympics.
Uh-huh.
Mance and his friend were way, 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 way far ahead of everybody else. They were blowing everyone else away. And then they're just jogging along together. And then Connor Mance at the finish line stopped so that his friend could win, and then he would come in second.
I know. It was a good move.
He's a good man.
Yeah. Well, they trained together, you know.
Yeah.
But anyways, here's the news story. Connor Mance beat the half marathon record. So there's a new record set for the half
US
marathon.
or in the world?
I want to say, hold on, American half marathon record,
Oh,
but he
okay.
raced against other people in the world. So
Yeah.
he raced against like someone from Ghana and someone from Ethiopia. Anyways, he beat the record. The record is 18 years old. So he beat it
Wow.
by 17 seconds. And
Tip of the hat to Connor Mance.
Yeah, it's pretty
I
cool.
wouldn't be even trying to win a half marathon. I would just be trying to finish a half marathon.
I ran a half marathon once. Mance finished his half marathon in 59 minutes. I think that
Wow.
mine took me 2 hours and 13 minutes. So I'm almost as fast as him.
I can't imagine jogging for that long, Melissa. Did you
Yeah.
walk at all during the marathon?
The half marathon? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I had a little pacing thing where it was like run 7 minutes, walk 1. Like
Is
when
it
you're
okay to
doing races, you figure out beforehand exactly what you're going to do.
Is it okay to bring a scooter along with you?
Yeah, you
Just-
can bring a scooter for just a little bit. And then, I like to have people every mile waiting with like a little pint of Ben and Jerry's for me to take a few. I change before I get to the very end, I change into a tiara and a tutu. I look especially sweet when I cross the finish line. Yeah, there's all kinds of things. I'm sure
I'm just
Max does
I'm
all
just-
of these things too.
I'm picturing you coming around the bend and they like have their water cups and you're shouting,
No.
"Not water, ice cream."
New York
not
Super
water."
Fudge chunk. Yeah, that's how it goes.
Oh, that's great. Well, my quick clip is Elder Stevenson spoke at devotional
Okay.
at BYU, and he urged them to carry 4 banners or flags, metaphorically, of course.
Okay, good. We're not going to walk around waving flags. I could see it happening. Watch at girls' camp. Somebody's going to be like, our theme is 4 flags, and we're going to go on a little journey, and you're going to pick up a flag at each station. This is going to happen, actually.
Well,
It's
the
not
first
gonna be
flag was a
metaphorical.
rainbow flag, and the second was Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
And then there's the American flag with the blue stripe on it.
That's right.
And then there was one that was something like Trump waltz, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
I forgot that flags are kind of a touchy issue in America right now.
Yeah, I think that this is the purpose, right? Elder Stevenson's trying to encourage people to set aside some of this anger that they have, some of this division, and wave the banner of a peacemaker, the banner of understanding, the banner of the restoration, and the banner of engagement.
Oh, like getting engaged. That's right, because it's at BYU where he gave this talk.
If I were an enterprising social media person, I would create banners with symbols for each of those things and start selling them online.
Yeah. And obviously the engagement one is a ring. Yeah.
Yeah,
This is
wouldn't
great.
that be great?
Yeah.
And
you're
I'd
right.
hang them in the windows of heritage halls so that people know.
I'm available.
Anyhow,
Yeah.
that's all. I have nothing more to say
Okay.
about that.
Last quick clip. The church released a new missionary prep curriculum. It's been a couple years since they updated missionary prep. Now they've done it again. It's for both college age and young youth. And basically the mission prep lessons, 13 of them are like on gospel and 10 of them are on skill practices.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Guess
Well-
what some of the skills they're going to learn in missionary prep are?
I'm going to say brush the teeth.
No. Some of them are
So-
funny though. Listen to this. Intentional breathing
oh boy.
is one of the skill
Like
practices.
meditation or something like that? Or
I
is
don't
it
know.
because some people breathe a little too heavily?
Yeah, don't be a heavy breather. This one is use technology righteously.
Yeah, well, none
Yeah.
of them know how to do that.
Develop healthy thinking patterns.
I think
That's a
that's a very
skill. That's a
it-
skill. Yeah.
uh-huh.
Anyways, that's all I have to say.
So my sons are doing their mission paperwork right now. So I
Oh, yeah.
started reading my mission journal when we do
Mhm.
family scripture time. And it's
How
just,
delightful.
it's kind of fun for them because
Yeah.
we're still like, I'm in the MTC and I don't know, judging people and various things
Sure.
that I did.
Yeah.
It's shocking to me, like how young and immature I was when I was a
You were
missionary.
not ready to go on a mission. You were not.
And yet at the same time, I felt like I was the most righteous person in the MTC.
Oh, you did, which is partly why you weren't ready. You really thought highly of yourself.
One time I was sitting in the MTC and the teacher just threw the eraser right above my head. Like, I don't know if he was aiming for my head or he hit right where he was aiming for, but it was so close. And then he said, "Would you please leave, Elder Miles?" I was like, "What?" So I got up to leave and he's like, "I'm just kidding. Sit down." But I think he's just like, "I need to
I've
slap
had
this
enough of
kid."
you. Yeah. Yeah. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
I was having a conversation with one of my sons recently, and he said to me, he said, "Dad, what you lack is an understanding of when you've gone too far." And I thought, yeah, that's true. I just don't know when it is that I've gone too far.
That's funny.
Hey, Melissa, it's time for my favorite thing. Famous Mormons.
Famous Mormons.
Mormons.
All
Oh,
right, let's do it.
yours was better.
Okay.
Okay, now we are in the heat of the NFL playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
And there are 4 teams left. And after this Sunday, we will know who is going to the Super Bowl.
Okay, wait. Who do you want?
I've been a Kansas City Chiefs fan since I
Yeah.
lived in Kansas. So it's 12 years I've been a Kansas City Chiefs fan.
Yeah.
My heart of hearts, I like the Miami Dolphins, and they never go to the playoffs. So
Okay. I was
I root
all
for the
on
Chiefs.
Team Bills, but now it doesn't work anymore because they got out. So
No, the
no,
Bills
no.
are still in.
I'm sorry. I'm on Team Bills now. I was on
Steelers.
Team Lions, and
Oh,
they
the
got out. But now,
Lions.
now I've
Yeah.
jumped to Bills. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That's-
Okay.
Well, then we're rooting against each other this week, Melissa.
Okay. Great. That'll be
You
so
can-
fun for us.
can
I'm
tell
sure we'll
we're
talk about
passionate.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
So we care a lot.
Yeah.
So in honor of that, there are a number of members of our church who are in the NFL. So rather than trying to guess who in our church is in the NFL,
Okay.
we're going to try and guess how many of them are in the Pro Bowl. The Pro Bowl is where they select 1 or 2 people at each position for
Okay.
both the AFC and the NFC. So there's probably like
4
maybe-
quarterbacks and
there's probably a total of like maybe 50 people, maybe 60.
okay. And
So-
how many of them are LDS?
Yeah. So of the best players in the NFL right now,
Okay.
how
This
many
is fun.
members
I
of
like
our
this.
church? How many members of our church have been selected to play in the Pro Bowl?
Out of 50?
You can choose 4, 5,
50.
6, or 7.
Oh, good. I needed a range because I
Yeah.
had no idea.
4, 5, 6, or 7.
5.
You're right. It's exactly
Really?
5. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay.
What you're going to love is that one of them played football at Utah State.
Yes.
One of them played football at Southern Utah University.
Really?
Yeah. And one of them played at BYU and some of them at U of U, but
Okay, perfect.
they're not all. One of them played at Oregon.
That's
so they're
wonderful.
not all BYU people.
Okay, well, I wish. Wait, has this game already happened? When does this game happen?
It's
Super
going
Bowl.
to be in 2 weeks.
Okay, so it's before the Super Bowl?
Yeah, before the Super Bowl. It'll happen in Orlando.
Okay, I will root for them.
Yeah, I bet you will.
Okay, perfect. All right, it's time for Big Deal, Little Deal, No Deal. Matt,
Okay.
we've got a few silly ones, and my first one is kind of silly, but I hope you'll enjoy it. Are you ready?
Yeah.
A Brigham Young University study finds younger children are the favorites, and their parents aren't even aware that they're showing any favoritism. Big deal, little deal, no deal. 3, 2, 1.
Big
No
deal.
deal. Matt, is it just because you're younger than me and you feel like you're the favorite and this is a big deal?
It's because with the new leadership, this is the kind of research BYU can do now.
I seriously was like, honestly, this is the BYU study. Which department studied this?
How in the world would you even know that younger children are the favorites? Especially if the parents don't know. What are you going to like watch how much money they spend on the younger kids or whatever? That's a
Maybe.
bad measure. Well, you have more money once the older kids are gone. So
That's
of course you
true.
should.
That's
Yeah.
true. So what they research found is that older children are more responsible and that makes them easier to parent. But
Oh,
for some reason, younger children are still the favorites.
listen, my son listens to this podcast and he knows he is not more responsible. My oldest
Ah,
son emphatically was not the most responsible of my
right,
children.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it also said you can be a favorite if you're just an easygoing personality.
Also not
Shocker.
my so age order, birth
Yeah.
order has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, I know. I just thought it
Did,
was funny, like you said, that this is what we studied, and that our key takeaway is that the youngest are the favorite, and nobody knows.
do you think, Melissa, that I am the favorite child?
Let me think. Okay, there's a lot of kids in our family, so it took me a minute to like think through all of them. You're not my favorite.
Melissa, did you know my first 3 days in the MTC, I mentioned you at least twice in my journal, how much I love
Aw.
you and how much I missed you? And you sent me a
Oh,
package and it made me cry on my second day.
really?
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
cannot believe that's true.
So maybe you are my favorite.
Yeah, I'm probably your favorite. I think of our mom's favorite. No, I don't
Mm-hmm.
think it's you. I don't think
No,
it's me. No, I don't think it's either
no,
one of us. No. Is it
yeah,
the youngest? Do you think it's the
no,
youngest?
no,
Okay. All right. Sorry.
yeah. You know,
Um,
if anybody likes me, it's just because they compare current me to young me and they're
it's
like,
so true,
he's gotten
right?
better with
Yeah.
age.
No, that's
Yeah.
so true. I don't think that my youngest is my favorite, but I think she looks like the favorite because, yeah, like she gets way more time and attention, way more alone time and attention. And yeah, we have way more money now that the older two are gone. Of
Right.
course. Yeah.
And you and that daughter have more common interests, right? So you probably do things together more.
Yeah, because she lives in the same town as me. Yeah, that's
Right.
true.
Yeah.
But she's not my favorite, but I bet she looks that way. No offense to her if she's listening. She's not listening. So it's
There
fine.
was a general conference talk this last session where he talked about how everybody in his family thought that they were the favorite.
Uh huh.
My goal is to make sure that none of my kids think that they're the favorite. Okay. This
Okay.
is my story. Big deal, little deal, no deal. What we learned from the annual Seminary and Institute Instructors Training Meeting. Big
Oh,
deal, little deal, no deal. 3, 2, 1.
no,
Yeah,
no
no deal.
duel.
This has to be no deal.
It could only be a dull. It could only be a deal because of the last time we recorded how we talked about seminary teachers. You really stood your ground on the fact that they have no educational training, no more than early morning seminary teachers. So I
Well,
don't know.
why don't you follow this link and see how much training they're getting in this? It used to be a bigger deal. They would get them all together. You could go to like it was almost like Education Week, and it was
Okay.
at Provo for a whole week, and all of the release time and then all of the volunteers were invited to come and do these workshops and all of those sorts of things.
Uh huh.
So 20 years ago, it was a much bigger deal. Now it's not. I mean, we're a global church, so it's probably harder and all of that stuff, but you're not getting the same experience that they used to get, which is why I said no duel.
Okay. I think we agree. No deal.
Okay.
Okay. Are you ready for this one?
Yes.
Um, this is in quotation marks, a childhood under constant surveillance. A childhood under constant surveillance. This and other revelations from Ruby Frankie's daughter, Sherry Frankie's new book.
Mhm.
Big deal, little deal, no deal. 3, 2, 1.
Big
Big
deal.
deal.
All
Oh,
right.
thank
But I
you.
bet
Thanks
for
for
different
agreeing with me.
reasons.
Oh, okay.
My reason is because my children too are under constant surveillance. So I want I want to know, what did Sherry Frankie like? Could I get some
Interesting.
tips from Ruby on constantly
Yes.
surveilling
Yeah.
my children?
It's interesting. I hear what you're saying, and that's not actually what she's talking about. She's not talking about constant surveillance from her mother, Ruby. She's talking about constant surveillance from the internet at large because
Ooh.
she was used as a child. She was on on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube constantly as a way for her mother to make money off of her very popular
Yeah.
YouTube channel. So she's saying, yeah, I was under constant surveillance from the world internet. Yeah.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
I'm fed up with this stuff, Melissa. I've had
Oh,
enough.
wow. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
You've got a strong opinion.
Yeah, I really do think we need, if we have child labor laws, then
Hmm.
children need to have some kind of rights when it comes to these things. And it
Mm-hmm.
can't be enough for their parents to say, hey, we have this really fun idea, because it is
Yeah.
exploitative. I don't know. Maybe there are some instances where it's positive and good for a family, but the idea that you would use your children to make money or build your brand or whatever, that's
Yeah.
horrible. That's completely
Okay,
wrong.
well, here's what's interesting. I did just finish reading this book in its entirety. It's called In the House of My Mother. That's close if that's not what it's called, but I did just finish the book. And I did have to wrap my brain around this because I imagine I'm fairly close to Ruby Frankie's age. When I was raising kids, we got this big push from the first presidency about use social media for good. Use it as a way to bear your
Oh,
testimony, use it as a way to journal. And it was very much encouraged to put yourself and your family and all of your beliefs on social media, right? Like
that's true.
it was encouraged and pushed. And so, did Ruby Frankie do this? Yes. And she did it successfully. And I could understand in reading this book how Ruby Frankie could think, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do as a good, faithful member of the church, at least at the beginning.
I think it's totally fine for people to do that for themselves.
Yeah.
I think that there's no way to know, even when we think we know our children really, really well, as
I
they're
know.
growing up, they don't even know themselves. And so
Yep.
there's no way to know how they actually feel about being put in a situation where you're showing things, right?
Right.
Like this story says that they showed her shaving her eyebrows or shaving her
Waxing her
legs.
eyebrow. Yeah. And shaving her
Yeah.
legs. Yeah. Both of the things. Yeah.
There's no way to know how a person feels about that at the time or how
Yeah.
they're going to feel about that 20 years from now.
And there's no way for a child to give consent, right? Like,
Mhm.
first of all, there's a power dynamic where they are unable to, say no to a parent if the parent is like, I want you to do this. But what Sherry is saying is that it was constantly, all day, every day, smile, smile, do this, behave this way, act this way, do this thing. There's one part of the story that Sherry writes where they're at Disneyland because they've been given a product promotion for hand wipes. And so they go to Disneyland. Disneyland opens early just for the Frankie family so they can go shoot
Wow.
their promotional video. And so their mom's got like all of these places they're supposed to stand, all of these scenes they're supposed to reenact. And this is their time at Disneyland as a family,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
And her brother is acting up. He doesn't want to go along with it. He's 12. He's like, this is stupid. And he's just acting like a 12-year-old. Well, according to the book, Ruby Frankie gets so upset with him that he's not playing his part because she's not able to get the shots that she wants in order to get what she needs to promote the product that she's being paid to promote. So she actually sends him to the hotel and locks him in the hotel room for the day. They continue to shoot their promotional pieces. Anyways, the story unravels and actually really a lot of terrible things happen. I mean, Ruby Frankie is in jail right now for abuse, along with
How old
Jody
was this?
Hildebrandt. But
How old was the boy when they put him in the hotel?
12.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But the point was not that this was abusive. The point was that he had to behave a certain way in order for them to earn the money. And if he couldn't do that, that wasn't going to work for them,
Yeah.
Anyways, it did really, when my kids were young and Instagram was kind of new, I didn't let them have their own Instagram accounts, but we had an Instagram account called Jensen Eats. That's her last
That
name.
was fun. Yeah.
And we would go to Maverick and pick up, some kind of a funny, new, weird candy or chip or something. And we'd try it and we'd give our comments on it. And it was like silly and funny and dumb. And we liked doing it. But a lot of people enjoyed it, but there was a time where my kids were like, yeah, we don't want to do this anymore. And I was like, no, let's keep doing it. It's so, so fun, and they're like, no, and we're like, we're done,
Well, that's good that you let them have that kind of power to say, no,
Listen,
we're
I
done.
still ask them every week if we can bring it back, even though it's 10 years later.
So there's this Peacock show called Girls Gone Wild. It's a documentary
Okay.
about girls gone wild. And this was apparently in the early 2000s. And I didn't really know about Girls Gone Wild, but apparently they would like go around to spring break and then girls would lift up their shirts and they would do videos of this and then sell this kind of porn as cassette tapes. And so the documentary has a lot of these women now 20 years later saying, I didn't really consent. I didn't really know what was going on. I was drunk. I didn't enjoy that. And I feel like a similar kind of thing is happening with social media,
Yeah.
where people are realizing later on, like, oh man, we maybe put too many things on social media.
Well, and this is something that Sherry refers to in the book, as a child, you have an entire digital footprint that is out of your control. By the time you turn 18 and you're doing things like applying for colleges, applying for jobs, I mean, you have a digital footprint that often begins when your mother posts an ultrasound picture of you, right?
Yep.
And you're tagged in it all the time. Anyways, I think it's a conversation worth having, but I think especially from an LDS perspective, I think we really need to examine, because there are so many popular mommy bloggers that are LDS. Like, it is
Yeah.
a huge thing, and so many people earn their money from it. And I do think it's worth examining, like, should we be putting our children in these situations? And I think once I read this book, I just completely changed my mind, and I was like, wow, this is terrible. This is actually a terrible thing we've done.
Wow. Well, good for
Yeah.
you, Melissa.
Okay.
We're gonna I don't know if I should do this as big deal, little deal, or no deal, but while we're recording, Kurt texted me a story that he thinks we should talk about on This
Okay.
Week in Mormons.
Yeah, let's hear it.
He doesn't own us, but he does own the podcast. And
Sure.
so let's
Sure.
talk about it. Okay.
Okay.
This is from the church newsroom. I'll give you the
Okay.
headline.
Okay.
Depictions that deceive when historical fiction does harm. Is that a
Oh,
big deal, little deal, or no deal? 3, 2, 1.
no deal.
Yeah, it's hard to say from the headline.
Is this having to do with that American? What's the name?
The Mountain Meadows Massacre,
Yeah.
fictional story.
Yeah, it's that American. I forgot the name of the show.
Well, so here's what the church says. The problem with such deceptive, graphic, and sensationalized storytelling is that it not only obscures reality and hinders genuine understanding, but can foster animosity, hate, and even violence. This is particularly troubling today when peacemakers are needed more than ever. At a time when so many responsible leaders are condemning the division and hostility that dominates so much of our public discourse, we echo the plea of President Nelson to build, lift up, encourage, persuade, and inspire others.
Hmm. This annoys me, Matt, and you're going to
Yeah.
disagree with me.
No, tell me.
Okay, here's the thing. People are adults and they can make their own decisions and calls. Okay. And
Yeah.
listen, just because some people might watch this show and be like, oh, I didn't know the Meadows Massacre happened like this. Well, it didn't. Okay. But
Right.
here's the thing, if people want to watch it for entertainment, that is their prerogative. And
Mhm.
and frankly, like, there's enough history written about the Mountain Meadows Massacre that if anybody wants to know the actual history, it is not hard to uncover. And this show, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it. Can you? American.
There was a link to it in the.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't care.
I watched the first episode of it. We can talk about it later, but it was whatever. It was clearly a drama set in the times, and frankly, I wasn't watching it as a history lesson. I just
Well,
wasn't.
the reality is, you can pretty much any day of the week
Mhm.
find some historian that's going to talk about one of these subjects, or you
Yeah,
can go on PBS and watch like historically accurate documentaries, or you can
exactly.
go on YouTube and see really good documentaries. And the reality is, nobody watches those. So
Right.
they're not coming to this show to try to get accurate information. They're coming
Yes.
to this show. It's like Yellowstone or whatever, right? It's just some
Yes.
show. So did you see
American Primeval. Sorry, it just came to me. American Primeval. Yeah.
this movie? It's called Conclave. It won.
Oh, about the Catholic Church.
Yes, did you see that?
Because I don't care.
Oh, Melissa, I loved it so much. So a lot of the time when I'm watching this movie, I was thinking to myself, if I were a Catholic, elements of this would make me uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, it's a fictionalized, right? The whole movie is about choosing a new pope.
Okay.
And so much of it is fictionalized and perhaps sensationalized and things like that. But they said things in there that moved me. Like one
Okay.
of the cardinals or whatever, he said this thing. I'm still thinking about it today. But he talked about certainty as a sin. He talked about when we're so sure that we're right about something, we leave space. We remove all space for God to build
Mm-hmm.
faith, because if you're certain, there's no room for faith. And so we should be cautious whenever we're really certain about something. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, That's not anything I would ever get from my church or from anything like that. But wow, I love that I'm getting this from a movie about the Catholic Church that I
Yeah.
understand makes them mad. But like, you can use history, or you can use historically accurate settings to
Mm-hmm.
share a message, to teach a story, to inform people. And it doesn't have to conform to exactly how things really were or really
Yeah.
are.
I agree. I guess what I'm saying is I'm annoyed that the church needs to put out a statement about this, because the church statement says American Primeval misrepresents Brigham Young
Of
and it
course.
calls the series dangerously misleading. Okay, I don't think we learned our lesson. Remember, they came out before like Secret
Heretic.
Lives of Mormon Wives and
Yeah.
Heretic, and we're like, ooh, be careful. And what happened? Those shows exploded.
So did
Nobody.
Heretic did too, right?
And guess what? They
Like,
had good effects. I think the church was so
yeah.
concerned that they would have these terrible effects. And guess what? They ended up doing, I feel, a lot of good for Mormonism and the way that we're seen in the world, I
Yeah.
think. Um,
Yeah.
just like, listen, it just feels like I'm so anti control. I'm so anti trying to tell everybody how to, like,
So
how
again,
to
like,
look at entertainment. Like, we don't
yeah.
need controlled in this area.
So going back to my example with Conclave, right, where it was like Catholic
Yeah.
and all that stuff, and I learned maybe something about Catholicism that I liked. In
Yeah.
the same way, if a person watches this Netflix show and doesn't know
Mhm.
anything about our church,
Yeah.
and all they walk away from that is knowing the name Brigham Young
Yeah.
as something other than a school or a football team, that's a positive thing, in my opinion.
Exactly. That's
It's
what I
really
think
hard.
too.
It's hard to cut through the noise.
Yeah.
Is this going to inspire violence against members of our church?
No.
There
No.
are many more things in society inciting violence at the moment, right?
And
There are
besides,
people.
this is a historical Western. Guess what? Life was violent back then. Guess what we don't do these days? Scalp people. Like, it's not equivalent. I'm sorry.
I don't know anybody who watched Yellowstone and they're like, you know what? I'm going to go shoot all those Montana ranchers. I'm really
Right.
mad at them. I don't
Yeah.
like the way they behaved in that show. I'm
Yeah.
going to go get them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay, well,
well.
this brings us to Twim Takes a little bit. I have two things I wanted to talk about for Twim Takes today, okay?
Okay.
The
Yep.
first one is VidAngel. Do you know what VidAngel is?
I love them. Yes. I
Okay.
love them.
So do you use them?
Only when I have Netflix, because all the
Yeah.
other streaming services I use, I can't use VidAngel.
You can use it on more services now. It's on
Maybe
Amazon
Apple.
Prime. It's on
Okay, yeah.
Apple. Anyways, here's the
Yeah.
thing.
I
I
use it
have
when I have those services.
Yeah. I have not used VidAngel for ages, ever since it became digital, and I recently was reminded of it, and I was like, okay, well, here's how I was reminded of it. Side note. I guess somebody talked about it once when I was standing next to them, and then my phone heard it, and then absolutely every ad I got was for VidAngel. So thank you, internet.
Gotta use
Anyways,
DuckDuckGo.
yeah, honestly. So anyways, I just started using it, and I'm telling you what, TV is fun again. I
Yeah.
want to watch TV. It is amazing to be able to
Yeah.
watch content and filter out language, sex, violence, gore, whatever you want to filter out. And I'm not doing a promotion for VidAngel, but if you want me to, I will, because that's how much I'm loving it.
Yeah.
You can choose specifically, I don't want this word and this word and this word in this show.
Mhm.
And I don't want this scene. I don't want this gore. Like, step by
Yeah.
step, you can pick it before you watch it. And I'm going to say, it's pretty seamless, like the
Yeah, it is.
integration. Yeah.
And it remembers it too, Melissa. So
Yeah.
I'll have it for a year. Actually, it's not ever a year. I'll have it for like a month.
Yeah.
What I do is I say I'm going to have Netflix for a month, and I
Yeah.
want to watch all that stuff. So I'll have VidAngel and Netflix for a month,
Yeah.
and then I'll watch all that content. And then 5 years later, when I'm ready to get Netflix again, it remembers all of my settings.
That's awesome. Okay,
Mhm.
so I'm loving it. Here's why I want to talk about it, okay? Like, when I just told you that I've seen American Primeval, I feel a little bit yucky inside. I feel a little bit weird saying that I've watched this show that, honestly, for all intents and purposes, is pretty graphic and violent.
I wouldn't
It's
know. I watched it on
horribly.
VidAngel.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
then, so here's the thing, when I'm out and about and having conversations, especially with young adults in my ward or
Mhm.
things like that, and I'm like, oh yeah, I watched that. It's so good. Then I'm like, oh, wait. I feel like I'm the thing where you're supposed to avoid even the appearance of evil. I
Mhm.
don't feel like I'm doing that anymore. I
Yeah.
have this weird, I don't know, kind of moral disconnect where I'm like, no, I'm loving it and watching it, and TV is fun again, like I said. But wait,
Well,
But wait,
and
I don't want to have a whole conversation with everybody where I'm like, yes, I watched that, but just so you know, I didn't listen to any of the F words in it. Like, it feels weird.
well, I have so that sounds not historically accurate, by the way. If Brigham Young was anyhow, when I talk, because it happens to me, I teach at BYU Idaho, right? So when
Yeah.
I say that in class, I say it's got a lot of bad stuff in it.
Yeah.
So I watched it filtered, and I recommend that you do the same.
Uh-huh.
But
It's not
young
even that
people
I'm
don't
judging
care,
people. I don't care if they watch it. I don't
right?
care.
And they don't
Like, and
care.
I don't think they're a bad person if they watched it unfiltered or anything like that. It's just that me, like, that's not who I am. Like, I'm very much known as a person who doesn't watch stuff like that. And
Yeah,
so then I feel a little bit uncomfortable.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, we have brothers who are not active in the church, and so from time to time, I'll talk with them about movies that I saw. Like I remember talking to them about The Hangover, and I was like, "That was the stupidest movie I ever saw. It was so lame." And then I told them that it was like 40 minutes long because I watched it on VidAngel, and they're like, "Well, of course you hated it because all the good stuff was filtered out."
Sure.
So ultimately, people figure out that you watched a filtered version because oftentimes people remember the really edgy stuff in shows.
Yeah. But you don't think that I have to avoid the appearance of evil?
No. You just have to wear, like, a VidAngel sticker on your,
T-shirt?
yeah, something like that, and let
I
them
just
know.
get a little ring that says VidAngel. Stroke it as I talk.
Again, talking about trademarking things, we should create a little symbol that says, like,
Yes.
"Filtered," right? So you could be like, on social media, "I loved American Prometheus," and you put that little
Yeah.
symbol there,
Yeah,
"Filtered."
yeah. Okay. I have another twin takes. Are you ready for the next thing I wanna talk about?
Yeah.
So I opened up my email this morning and I had my digital statement from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that was like, "Hey, here's your donations for the year. Go ahead and use this for tax purposes." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I have access to that anytime I need because obviously I pay tithing online. I think the majority of people pay tithing online. I can access those records anytime I want. In fact, when I go into tithing settlement, it's not printed there for me. Like I can
Right.
print it out and bring it myself, or I just can have access to it on my phone or whatever. It's not like the old days where you had to have it all printed out. Okay, so here's the
Mhm.
thing, Matt. Tithing settlement. Why do we need it anymore?
Well,
Can
and it's not
we
even called settlement, it's called
Yes,
declaration.
tithing declaration. Why can't I just get online and check a box that says declare full or declare not full? Here's the
You
thing, Matt. And
can. I actually think you can. Oh, no, no, no,
no,
no.
you can't. You can't.
That's what the bishop does. I was
That's what the
misremembering.
bishop does, yeah. And here's the thing, I'm not I'm not mad that the bishop wants to that the bishop gets an opportunity to meet with every person every year. That's fine, that's whatever. But does that have to be in the heading of tithing settlement? Because guess that's a lot of time and work and energy to,
Yeah.
in this quarter, you have to meet with every single person. You have to sit down with them and they have to declare. Why do we have to do that? I feel like maybe here's some options, Matt.
Okay.
Opt into tithing settlement. If you really enjoy the process of going and sitting and talking about the blessings that come from tithing as a pretty traditional thing to talk about and declaring, and that makes you feel like good and like this is a tradition that I enjoy. Can you opt in? But also, could you opt out if you just want to check a box online? Because that's all I need to do. It's just check a box online. Thank you.
Okay,
How
can
do
I
you
do the
feel?
same
Yeah,
with voting? Can I do that with voting too?
I'm
Just
fine
check
with
a
that.
box online?
And you know what? Sustaining the bishop. Check. Check a box online. What do you think, Matt? Don't you
We,
think we've moved into a new digital age? We do not need to go in for a tithing settlement.
cut a story from our podcast about all of the things that President Nelson has done in the last 7 years.
Yeah.
We make a plea with you, President Nelson.
Yes.
One more change that would benefit a lot of people.
This is a great idea, right?
Tithing settlement. I mean, I don't care,
Yeah.
because I have to go see I don't know, it seems to fit in with, like, the bishop has to interview kids so often, the youth so often,
Okay,
right?
but
There's a
why
lot
not
of
give him the whole year to have a 15-minute interview with everybody in the ward, but he can do it over the span of an entire year. And then it can just be a meeting with the bishop instead of a tithing declaration. It can just be like, yeah, I like to reach out and visit with each of you once a year. Pick a time anytime between January and December, not during the busiest holiday months.
Well, the answer
And
to
we'll
this
check
is,
in.
in my field, we call this path dependence, which
Oh,
basically is like once something gets done a certain way, you keep doing
mm-hmm.
it. So, for
Yeah.
example, the
I hate that,
keyboard,
Matt. I
right?
hate that.
The keyboard is QWERTY, the QWERTY, right?
Uh-huh.
The way we type on a keyboard is all based on how those arms would move on a typewriter and trying to
Oh,
like maximize that efficiency. But since
okay.
everybody learned to type that way, then when
Yeah.
they created computers, the computer keyboard was that way. And so
Yeah.
we just keep it that way.
I
And this
hate
is
that. I hate that we do things just because they've always been done that way.
But this is tithing settlement because back
Right.
in the day, you had to actually settle your tithing. They had to say,
Yeah.
okay, bring in how many cows did you give us and how many cows did you do? And if you
Yeah.
didn't, then you weren't a full tithe payer.
Right.
And that had consequences, I suppose. You had
Okay,
to
but you
carry
like
that
my
shame.
idea. You like my let's rework this.
I think we have to decide, is it really just a declaration? Is that all we need is for somebody to declare it? If so, let's make it easier.
Yeah.
If we're going to think of it as an instructional, teach people how to pay tithing and have a discussion about
I don't
tithing.
need that every year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so, okay.
Okay, great.
President
Thanks.
Nelson, this is the This Week in Mormon's plea to you.
I think it's a great idea. Listen, you can pray about it. I'm not saying I'm the prophet or anything. I'm just saying if I can get this digitally, let me just say digitally that I've done it. And guess what? When I go meet with my bishop for a temple recommend, that is a great time for him to instruct me about tithing, right? Because that's one of the questions. That's a great time for him to do that sort of a thing. But
I don't want to make it sound like I'm ungrateful for 2-hour church. And recently I was thinking, how did I ever survive when primary was 2 hours long?
I know.
And
I
why did
know.
we do Sunday school every single week? I don't want
Right?
to sound
Isn't that
and
funny?
and the ministering changes. I'm grateful for
Right.
the changes in
But this
ministering.
legacy could be greater than any of that.
But if President Nelson, it's not too much to ask.
Yeah, it's
It
not
was
too
just
much to
check a
ask.
box.
We didn't seem too ungrateful. Okay, thank you for indulging me.
All right, This Week in Mormon History, Melissa.
Yes, great. Because speaking of history, we like to get it right.
Two
None
of the
of this
things.
fiction.
That's right.
None of
This is
this
all
fiction.
accurate.
Yes.
Two of the things happened on exactly the same day.
Oh, okay.
Well, close to the same.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, the first one, 55 years ago, January 23rd, 1970.
Okay.
Oh my heavens, Melissa. Imagine that if you were born in 1970, you turn 55 years old this year.
Yeah, it's not that
Oh,
hard to imagine. We're getting awfully
oh
close,
man.
but we're not
Well,
there yet.
Joseph Fielding Smith became president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. At the age of 93, he was the oldest person at the time to become president of the church.
That is really old. Wait, how old was President Nelson?
Pretty close to 93.
93-ish? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
He didn't, Joseph Fielding Smith didn't live as long as President Nelson has lived.
Okay.
Okay, this one I think is so fun.
Okay.
125 years ago, January 23rd, 1900,
Okay.
the U.S. House of Representatives excludes B.H. Roberts because he is a polygamist.
Oh.
I
Wait,
don't
what
know
does
if,
that mean? Excludes him? Like he wasn't allowed to, like he was
yeah,
voted in and not allowed to stay in? Or what does that
yeah.
mean?
Congress makes its own rules about who can and cannot be a member of Congress. So
Really?
they don't care if you won the election in your district. If they don't want you
Ah.
there, they'll kick you out.
Wait, was it against the law then to be a polygamist in
Uh,
1900? I don't think it
uh,
was.
yeah, it was. It was against
Oh,
the
it
law.
was?
Yeah.
Interesting.
But listen, if you pass a law that says you can't be a polygamist and somebody's got like a wife, what is he supposed to do? Kick them to the
Right.
curb?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But
Okay.
this happened. The previous Congress. Remember George Santos from New York? They just kicked him out of Congress.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Congress can do that whenever they want.
Okay.
A word of warning to you, members of Congress: behave
Yeah.
yourselves.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
125 years ago, as well, January 22nd, 1900, Presidents Lorenzo Snow, George Q. Cannon, and Joseph F. Smith were at the office. The question.
Wait. They're all presidents?
They're the first presidency.
Oh, okay. Okay. So they're at the office. Got it.
The question arose today whether or not the temples should be open to perform marriages on behalf of couples who had previously had their endowments. It was thought that since the closing of the temples, this might be done, but the presidency decided today that it would be best not to make this exception, but to close them all for all purposes until the danger of the smallpox contagion had passed.
Whoa.
Uh-huh.
That
See,
feels relevant.
yeah, like in our short memory, we say COVID-19, all the temples closed. What an unusual thing. But
Yeah.
no.
They
They
had a
did.
smallpox contagion and they closed all
Mhm.
the temples.
I wonder
Huh.
if there was an RFK Jr. back then saying, smallpox vaccine is of the devil.
Matt, too far. Too
I
far.
don't know. Sometimes I don't know when I've gone too far.
Wait, but we did, so they chose to close temples even for marriages, but we
Yeah.
did during COVID-19. My daughter got married in a temple during COVID-19.
But there was a time when it was closed from like
Yeah, that's true.
March
That's true.
through a period of time. They were all closed.
Yeah.
Do you know my
Which-
favorite thing that happened? This is a different subject,
Okay.
but way back in the day, they closed the Rexburg Temple. No, they closed the Idaho Falls Temple for renovations, and so
Okay.
the Rexburg Temple was super crowded. And so they invented this system where you would walk into the temple and say, "I would like to do an endowment," and they would give you a card that had a number on it, and it would tell you which session you got to go to. And so
Oh,
you could show up at the temple at say 10 o'clock and all of the sessions were full until 3 p.m. and you just had to sit there and wait with your card. And I was like, we need an app or something where you can schedule appointments in advance and I don't have to show up at the temple and just see what card they're going to give me. And the pandemic
wow.
did that for me. The pandemic
Yeah.
created the necessity of this online reservation system,
Yeah.
which appears to not be used at all anymore.
In some ways, it's almost as if you willed the pandemic to happen for your own benefit.
I like that thought.
Okay.
Let's end with that thought, Melissa.
Let's do. Okay.
Hey, listener, remember you can subscribe to Patreon and get bonus content for just a few dollars a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed that Kurt has been putting This Week in Mormons content on YouTube that doesn't necessarily get dropped on the podcast. So if you listen to the podcast and you're like, I wish there were 4 more hours of content that Kurt produced, go to YouTube. You can find us on YouTube. And you can put comments on there and we'll read them on the show. You could email us at contact@thisweekinmormons.com. Anything else they can do, Melissa?
You know, you could just love and pray for us, and we'll
Yeah.
feel that. We'll acknowledge that and feel that. And if you wanted to write Matt a letter that said, even though he doesn't realize it, he's the favorite. He can be the favorite podcast host if he's not the favorite
Oh.
child.
Oh my
And
goodness.
Matt is a words of affirmation guy,
I
and
would
that
love
would
it.
really bless his life and not hurt me in the least. So yeah,
Tiffany, if you could, specifically Tiffany, if you would just tell me I'm your favorite, that would go a long way to making me
Perfect.
feel better today.
Perfect. Okay, sounds good.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to the original Mormon/Latter-day Saint News podcast. We'll talk to you again